Hi everyone. Today in this video we will be looking about the food processing and preservation, and we will be looking into the important points that are meant for food processing and preservation. So as far as this video is concerned, I have prepared this video for the food safety officer exam that is going to be conducted by the Medical Recruitment Board of Tamil Nadu. At the same time, this is also suitable for different exams like Central Food Safety Officer that will be conducted by FSSA and other bodies. So you could consider to take a look at that. So now going into the video, first we will be dealing about the basics in food processing. So in this, first let us see about the dry storage and the conditions meant for dry storage. The conditions meant for dry storage are like the dry storage, it should be having a temperature of 20 degrees Celsius, and the humidity should be below 50% RH, that is relative humidity should be below 50%, and actually it is used for the freeze dried products and other dry products. So they might be asking you like what are the temperatures. They might be giving you some 3 or 4 options, and they might be asking you for the temperature for the dry storage. So you could mark it's 20 degrees Celsius, and the relative humidity they might be giving below 50%, and in MCQs they might be giving below 50% or above 50% or equal to. So you need to select the option below 50%. That is a correct answer for dry storage. It could be asked in any way exams. You just please note down the points that which I had given in the red color. So these are actually much more important. That's why I have marked those points in red color. Kindly I want to emphasize those points, and please note down those points in red color. So in this point I want to tell you that the dry storage, it should have a humidity, an ideal humidity below 50%, and it should be between 30 to 35, or it could be between 30 to 40, and the temperature, it should be about 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, and it's used for mostly for food products like dry fruit products or some freeze dried products like whatever freeze dried, like green chili or red chili or whatever freeze dried products. As you know, these products should be maintained at a very low temperature, and the very low optimum temperature, and the moisture should be very low. It should be below 2%. That is the reason for dry storage. So going to next point, the wax formulations and fumigation. The wax formulations and fumigation, they are used to delay the onset of spoilage of foods, mainly fruits and vegetables. As you might know, the wax formulations are kind of enhancing the shelf life of a product. The wax formulation, it is used as a treatment or coating. It's as a laminate and impregnation of primary food contact materials. The wax formulation you might have heard or seen in foods like fruits or vegetables, and actually they are doing this to enhance the shelf life for the product, that is to delay the spoilage of foods. These two things, mainly wax formulations or fumigation. So if they are asking like wax formulation is used to delay the onset of spoilage of foods, so you could give a true. In case they are asking for true or false, I just want to tell that questions could be asked in any way. It could be asked in a MCQ, or it could be asked in a true or false, or it could be asked in any way. So please try to remember the points that are necessary. Try to understand the subject behind it. Like if I say wax formulation here, so kindly note that what is a wax formulation and what it is used for. Just don't look at the points, simple points like if I say wax formulations or fumigations are used to delay the onset of spoilage of foods. So just don't stop with it. Please look into what is wax formulation and what is fumigation, so you might get a better understanding of the subject. So let me explain here what is a wax formulation. It's nothing but it's a treatment or coating or impregnation of primary food contact materials, whether it's fruits or vegetables. They just want to coat the product. Actually, it is used to lubricant to reduce the friction in manufacturing process. Also, it may be used to coat the food product directly. Also, they might coat the product, and the things that are used for coating the product are like soya wax or candelilla wax or wax types. They might be using for wax formation. Okay. Going to next point, the cereals, nuts, and milk products, they are categorized as hypersensitive foods. Hypersensitive food means some people might be allergic to some sort of foods. Like some people might be intolerant to lactose. So what we call it as lactose intolerant people. So these kind of foods are actually classified as hypersensitive food. So these 3 types of foods will be coming under the hypersensitive food, like cereals, nuts, and milk products. These are mainly called as hypersensitive foods because they can cause food allergies. So these 3 are classified as hypersensitive food. Actually, different people might be experiencing different allergies to a different kind of people, but commonly saying these three categories, cereals, nuts and milk, are categorized as hypersensitive food. Then nutrient claim free means that the food has at least possible amount of specified nutrient. What is the point here is that if a product has claimed that it is protein free or fat free or whatever, if they claim that it is a free, that means food has at least possible amount of specified nutrient. Say someone is claiming a biscuit is fat free, so it means that the product has very least possible amount of the specified nutrient, like fat or protein or something like that. So next point is, yeah, it's almost same. Earlier we saw about less, here we will be looking about reduced. Yeah, if they are saying that it's reduced content, it's reduced protein, reduced fat or reduced carbohydrate, it means that the food has a 25% less. Please note this one, the food has a 25% less of a specific nutrient than the regular product. Say if a product has 75%, normal biscuit has 75% of anything like carbohydrate or protein. So if they claim that it is reduced fat, reduced carbohydrate, so it might be having only 50% as compared to 75% of that normal product. That is the point here. Okay. Then another thing is cereals. Cereals are the major source of carbohydrates. The point here is cereals contain different constituents like fats or proteins or vitamins also, but the major thing that they're providing is carbohydrate. Please note that the carbohydrate are major source of the cereals are major source of carbohydrate. And another point is foods of plant origin can be used as additives for food preservation. Yeah, that is biodegradable. Yeah, we might have seen in last slide that we are using biodegradable packaging. So here in the same way they are used as additives also. So foods of plant origin can be used as additives for food preservation. Then proteins are held in a colloidal state and in a water system, and fats are held in an emulsion state. Okay, so they might be asking in a reverse way. So suppose they ask that proteins are held in an emulsion state. So that's a wrong. Proteins are always held in a colloidal state in a water system, and fats are always held in a emulsion state. So please note that proteins are held in a colloidal state in a water system, and fats are held in an emulsion state. So next point, the meat suckers is kept under UV rays, I mean ultraviolet rays, so that mold formation doesn't take place. Yeah, that is a sort of preservation of meat. What they do, they are keeping that under UV rays so that mold formation doesn't take place. So what the UV rays do, they kill the microorganisms, some sort of microorganism, and they inhibit the growth of certain type of molds. That is why the meat suckers is kept in UV rays for the purpose of preservation. The thing here you need to notice UV rays. Another thing is mold. Mesophile has an optimum temperature growth at around 37 degrees Celsius. Okay, there are three type of organisms that cause spoilage to our food. They are classified as mesophile, psychrophile, and thermophile. Okay, you might be knowing that. So here please note the optimal temperature required for the growth. Here I will be telling about the optimal temperature required for growth of any type of organism. So say example for this mesophile. The mesophile needs a temperature around of 37 degrees Celsius for the growth of that microorganism that are classified as mesophile. Okay. The next is psychrophiles. The psychrophiles, they have an optimum temperature growth between 10 degrees Celsius and 20 degrees Celsius. Please note the temperatures required for this particular group. Psychrophiles have an optimum temperature between 10 degrees Celsius and 20 degrees Celsius. The next comes the thermophiles. The thermophiles have an optimum temperature growth around 55 degrees Celsius. Please note the temperature. The thermophiles need an optimum temperature around 55 degrees Celsius. Then comes the next point. So we will in this point we will say about the category under which our food processing comes. Our food processing in India is actually, it is classified into two sectors. They are organized sector and unorganized sector. But when we look at that, the food processing is mostly in unorganized sector in our India. There is it's almost 60% of food processing sector comes under unorganized sector. Okay. The next point is oilseed processing. Both oilseed processing and wheat processing, they are classified, they come under grain-seed processing in India. In India, the grain-seed processing, it mostly consists of things like products like rice, wheat, maize, barley, and millets. Okay. So they constitute about 40% of the food sector, and in India we have classified as oilseed and wheat processing as grain processing. So they might be giving an MCQ. So please select what are the things that come under grain processing in India. So you need to select oilseed and wheat processing, that comes under the grain processing in India. Okay. So next point is the jams and jellies. The reason for their high shelf life. The reason for high shelf life for jams and jellies is due to their high acidity and high sugar content. You might have noted that the jams might have a shelf life of more than 1 year, almost 1.5 years. Yeah, the reason is that it has a high acidity and the sugar content is also high. That is the reason the jams and jellies have high acidity and they have a high shelf life. Next point is clarification of milk works on the principle of centrifugation. You know the principle of centrifugation, and the clarification also. In the clarification, it's actually the process of subjecting milk to a centrifugal force in order to eliminate the finer but heavier particles from milk, like somatic cells or some dust particles, something like that. And here you need to note that the clarification of milk works on the principle of centrifugation. Please note that. The next point is that homogenized milk has a creamier structure, whiter appearance, and bland flavor. These three are the main properties of the milk after homogenization. This is because actually the reason for this thing is that the fat globules that have the low density and they rise to the top and a homogenized milk, and these things attribute to the properties of whatever we say, like creamier structure, bland flavor, or white appearance. That is the reason for changes in the homogenized milk as compared to normal milk. Okay, pasteurized milk is not sterile and hence must be cooled immediately to prevent bacteria growth. Okay, the pasteurized milk, it is not sterile. The pasteurized milk though that is pasteurized, but it is not sterile. So actually we need to keep it under refrigeration, and we need to immediately cool to 4 degrees Celsius to prevent the product from getting spoiled. So main thing to be noted is pasteurized milk is not sterile. And another thing, chopping and protein extraction are the techniques applied to processing of fresh meat. Please note that these two things are attributed for the processing of fish meat: chopping and protein extraction. Another thing is marinating. Marinating is a process of applying oil or lemon or vinegar in addition with the spices to the meat. Actually, the thing is that marinating means, in general, what I am telling is that actually they are soaking the foods in some season, like acidic or liquid, before cooking. That is a process that is used to extend the that's a way of preservation of the product. But when it comes to meat, they are applying the oil or lemon or vinegar in addition with the spices, and they are soaking the meat, and that is especially the process that is held in meat. And next point is minimal processing. The minimal processing technology, actually it aims at processing food in such a way so that its natural flavor is retained to the maximum level possible. Okay, actually the minimal processing, there is a technique done by companies where they want the product to be fresh, as much fresh as possible. I mean to say, they don't want to lose the particular quality of the product. Say for example a spice or whatever is there, and they want the product to have its particular quality, like aroma or flavor, so if they want to maintain that, and if they want the product to not lose that character, so they need to opt for minimal processing, and that is a minimal processing. In this process, actually they use one or more methods or techniques, and actually they do processing in such a way that they retain the properties of the product, and then that doesn't cause undesirable changes in the texture and aroma and flavor of the product. Yeah, please remember that minimal processing technology, and main point is that natural flavor is retained in minimal processing. Another thing is, next point, this is actually a form of preservation of food. The light pulses and low dose gamma radiation. These things are effective for inactivation of bacteria and fungi in the food. These things are, these things could be used in hurdle technology also. Light pulses and gamma irradiation. They are used for inactivation of bacteria and fungi in the food. Okay. So next point is acidic electrolyzed water is non-photochemical process. It has been used as a disinfectant in the food processing industry. Please remember, this acidic electrolyzed water is a disinfectant. This main thing is to be remembered is that it's a disinfectant in the food processing industry. Okay. Then another thing is chlorine dioxide. Chlorine dioxide, it's a high oxidized material. It has a high oxidation capacity, and it is used as a biocide. So please remember, chlorine dioxide is a biocide. Okay, and acidic electrolyzed water, it is a disinfectant. Please remember these 2 points. Chlorine dioxide is a biocide, and acidic electrolyzed water, which I told previously, is a disinfectant. Okay, then we will look about antioxidants. The most famous and most common antioxidant used is niacin. Okay, the niacin, it's the most famous since it has high antibacterial activity against wide sort of gram-positive bacteria. So, okay, niacin is highly used antioxidants in the food industry. So, niacin has 34 amino residues and is used to reduce a microflora in the food industry. Please note, niacin has 34 amino residues. Please note that niacin has 34 amino residues. Okay, the next point is heat load. Heat load refers to the amount of heat that must be removed from any space in a given period. Okay, so if someone asks what is a heat load? Heat load for any material. Suppose we need to calculate the heat load of any particular material. So in that case, first we need to know what is heat load. A heat load, it refers to the amount of heat that needs to be, amount of heat that must be removed from any space in a given period. Okay, please remember that the amount of heat that needs to be removed from any space in a given space, that's called heat load. Simple thing. Okay, suppose we need to calculate the heat load for a particular fruit or vegetable. So that is calculated in such a way that by multiplying the specific heat of the food by the number of degrees of temperature that need to be lowered divided by the weightage of food. Okay, so just think, we need to calculate the heat load for a particular thing. So we need to multiply the specific heat of the food by the number of degrees of temperature that we need to reduce. If you need to reduce 4 degrees, we need to multiply the 4 degrees by the specific heat of the food divided by the weight of the food. That's simple calculation of heat load. Okay, these things might be asking they might be asking different sort of MCQs. So please understand the subject properly. What is heat load? How it is calculated? Okay, the smoked food are preserved by a combination of heat, salt, and dipping in brine. Okay, the smoked foods, as you know, the meat and fish are usually smoked. Actually, it gives aroma to the product, and the product gets hard, and it extends the shelf life also. Actually, the method of preservation is they might be using a combination of heat, salt, and dipping in brine. Okay. Then next is a pulsed electric field. In pulsed electric field, actually they do not use any sort of heat energy. They just have some aroma and flavor. So due to this reason, as they don't use heat and energy, the aroma and flavor of the food are retained. The advantage, please remember, the advantage of PEF, that is pulsed electric field, is the retention of aroma and flavor. Okay, so coming to next point, after subjecting a food to pulsed electric field, so you need to store it in the refrigerator to increase the shelf life of the product. So if you think that a product has been subjected to pulsed electric field and it is sterile, no, that is not the condition. After subjecting to PEF also, you need to store the product in the refrigerator to increase the shelf life of the product. Okay, the next is advanced oxidation process. Converts biodegradable organic materials into, advanced oxidation processes convert non-biodegradable organic material into a set of biodegradable organic material. Okay, actually these are set of chemical treatment procedures, okay, that are used to convert non-biodegradable organic material into biodegradable organic forms. Okay, Meat-based bioactive peptides have certain nutraceutical effects. So please remember, which are good for our health. The meat-based bioactive peptides are good for our health. Actually, you need to note what is bioactive peptides. The bioactive peptides, they are derived from food proteins and exert a positive effect in the health of us. So what I mean to say is the meat-based bioactive peptides have certain nutraceutical effects, and they are absorbed in a very good condition by the human body, and they have a very good health benefits also for humans. Okay, so the next point is breading, pre-dusting, and battering are methods of making coated meat products. The products are coated, meat products or whatever products are coated to extend the shelf life of certain products. So these are called as actually food coatings. So while coating a meat products, they are breading, pre-dusting, and battering. These three are the methods that are used for coating a meat products, and they are done for several reasons. For coating a meat product, they have several reasons, like they need to protect it from light, gas, moisture, or whatever. There is a reason for coating the meat products, and they extend the shelf life also. So they are coating the products, and the substances that mostly we use for the coating of meat products, the substance that we use mostly are they are polyalcohols or silicates. We may use such antibiotic coatings. So please note the coating meat products, and they are used to coat for extend the shelf life of the product, and mostly used products for coating of meat products or general coatings also. They can be monosaccharides or modified starches, can also be used for the coating of the meat products. Okay, then next is the respiration rate decreases at lower temperatures, which decreases the microbial activity. It's a very common thing. You might be knowing that. It's almost self-explanatory. Like at lower temperatures, the respiration rate of microbes decreases. Very simple. Okay, the shelf life. The shelf life is a period that ranges from the processing to the consumption of food. So it's a simple definition of shelf life, that it's a period time that ranges from the processing of the food product to the consumption of the product till it reaches the consumer and he consumes it. That is called the shelf life of the product. Then shelf-stable foods. The shelf-stable foods are considered as non-perishable. Please note the shelf-stable or non-perishable at room temperatures. And another condition that need to be noted is the shelf-stable foods are non-perishable at room temperatures, but in case the shelf-stable foods are opened, they must be stored in refrigeration. There is a thing you need to note. The shelf-stable foods, even though they are shelf-stable, but once they are opened, you need to store them in refrigeration. Okay, they might be non-perishable, okay, but once they are open, you need to store them in refrigeration. Okay, the next point is, sorry, I have prepared that much for this video. So in this video we actually had a basic look about this preservation thing. So you might be having some comments like in case I have made some mistakes in this video, please let me know. Please let me know about your negative comments for this video, and in case you feel that some product needs some particular topic like food hygiene or food quality or food biochemistry needs some extra emphasis. I mean, if you feel that they might be having a higher weightage in the exam, so please comment below. I will try to make a video on them. Okay, thanks for watching.